Live and direct from anywhere in the world, it's The Kelley Show with Dr. Kelley Mondesire.
Hello, and welcome to The Kelley Show, real people with real stories in real time. And I'm Dr. Kelley Mondesire, your host. Well, welcome back. It's February, and we're continuing our Love Month. And today I have a very special guest who's going to talk about happiness and what it means to be happy and how we can all be happy. During this time of February, Valentine's Day has a very large emphasis in advertising and marketing. It can be a very lonely month for many of us. But my special guest is going to tell us how we can overcome those feelings of sadness. So we're going to welcome our guest into the studio. But first, we have a message from our sponsor.
This portion of The Kelley Show is being brought to you by White Wolf Advisory Services. We are the bridge between nations, creating growth, commerce, and collaboration between cultures. Contact us today for more information.
Welcome back. I've got a very, very special guest. He is America's happiness doctor. Welcome to the show, Dr. Elia Gourgouris. Elia, come on down. How are you?
Kelley, it's a pleasure to be on your show. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. It's an honor and privilege to have you on this show because you're quite the superstar.
Well, I don't know about that, but I am happy for the most part.
Well, you're going to tell us all how we're going to be happy today. So let me first ask you, tell me a little bit about your background. Where are you from and where are you now?
So I'm 100% Greek, born in Athens, Greece. Grew up there until I was 10 years old, and then my family moved to a beautiful place called Santa Monica in Southern California. And that's where I did all my schooling. I went to UCLA, PhD in psychology, and then now I'm splitting my time 8 months out of the year. Our base is near Boulder, Colorado, up in the mountains. And then the other 4 months, we have a home in Greece. So we're in Greece/Europe. So my wife and I, our kids are raised. Now we got grandkids coming. And so we have, we're splitting our time between the U.S. and Europe.
Wow. Wow. Good for you. I'm envious. I'm coming right after you. It's my game plan. But let me ask you this. You came to the States as a little boy, and I watched a podcast where you talked about feeling a little bit left out, and you were a swimmer. And what happened? Can you give us a little bit about that story?
I was a swimmer. I was a national swimming champion in Greece. And interestingly enough, at the time, even now, though, Southern California was like the mecca of swimming. So, one of the reasons, not the main reason why we moved to Southern California, was that both my brother and I could continue to train and, continue to swim and succeed both in the United States and back in Greece every summer. So that was part of the story, yes. But
wow.
It was a big transition as a 10-year-old to go. We had a really good life in Greece, really good life. And unfortunately, my mom got cancer at the age of 39, which back in the day was like a death sentence, especially in Greece.
Well,
and I think
we have a photo of your beautiful mom.
They used to call her Elizabeth Taylor back then. I mean, just stunning. But that's the outside beauty. The more important thing about my mom was that Mama wasn't just loved by men and women. She was beloved because she was unconditional love and acceptance, never judged anybody, heart of gold. Part of the reason why we moved to the United States, the primary reason really was, had she stayed in Greece, she wouldn't have lived much longer, I don't think. But we moved to UCLA Medical Center, the best treatment in the world. And she was able to live another dozen years. So she passed away when she was 51. I had just graduated from UCLA, actually. Her life and her legacy, in a lot of ways, I think, continues, a lot of it living through me. Because I know we're this diving into deep right off the bat, but her parting words to me, Dr. Kelley's, before she passed away on her deathbed, literally, she said, "My boy," this was in Greek, of course. She said, "My boy, don't worry about me. I'm going to be just fine. I just want you to be happy." And then she went into a coma and died within literally 48 hours.
She has the kindest eyes, and you look so happy in her arms.
So safe and so loved, just totally loved and adored by my mom. And I adored her. I'm clearly a mama's boy. I am proud of it, actually. She was...
I know we talked about this in our first conversation, and my mother passed away January 2024, and she was 99 and a half.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah, and she up until the 2 days before her death, she did her hair, makeup, everything. She had been a model, lived independently, didn't have any aides. And her last words were to me, I just want you to be happy.
That's it.
And when your mother is at death's door, and she also said, no, I asked her, were you afraid? Are you afraid? She said, no, I wasn't afraid at all. It's very meaningful when your mother just wants you to be happy.
Of course.
How and when did you realize you wanted to become a very, very profound and well-known physician? And why did you choose the field of study?
When I first moved to the United States, I remember even in middle school, I was painfully shy. I know it's hard to believe because I travel all over the world and speak in front of, big audiences and so on. But young men and young women used to come and tell me their secrets, like in middle school and then high school. This is long before I knew that that's actually a profession. Like you could be a clinical psychologist, probably get paid for that. And for some reason, they felt safe with me. They would tell me their story. And I don't know if I helped them or not. I mean, what do I know in middle school or high school? Just, I would maybe give them a tip or two, just common sense stuff. And they're like, oh, thank you so much and whatever. And, it wasn't until later on when I realized, like, I might be really good with this,
How did you transition from private practice into becoming America's happiness doctor?
So I had a pretty huge private practice, and it was all word of mouth, Dr. Kelley. I'd never marketed once. When I retired finally, I found out that most psychologists, they last 10 years. And if they see like 20 to 25 patient hours per week on the average, that's considered full time. Well, I did it for 18 years, and I would see 45 patient hours a week, like literally morning, noon, night. My wife would be like, you're going to have a heart attack. You're going to kill yourself. And I'm like, no, I can handle it.
Holy cow.
Kind of arrogant, like I can handle it. And I didn't have the ability to say no back then. I didn't know how to say no to somebody. So I took everybody in. I had people on a wait list, and it was a lot. And I did handle it for the first 16 years. But the last couple of years, I started getting impacted physically by all the stress. I mishandled that even because the message came loud and clear for me I need to change directions, and I ignored it. And when you ignore that voice, whatever you call that voice, the spirit, the Holy Spirit, your intuition, your higher self, guess what happens? Life gets worse until you learn your lesson. And so, no, that's what happened to me. So finally, I crashed and burned. 6 days in the hospital, a couple of surgeries. I was this close to exiting. And I was still pretty young. I had kids at home, but the message that I got, Elia, I'm trying to take you in a different direction. You're not listening to me. And I want you to spread the light to a lot more people, which was kind of cryptic. I'm like, because my first thought, well, how to make money doing that? That's the first thought that I had. Like, okay. But the final statement was, and if you don't change your ways, I'm calling you home by the time you're 50. Well, guess what? My mom died when she was 51. So for me, 50 was not like that's ridiculous. I'm not going to, And I got the message, and I changed. And then I transitioned to becoming an executive coach and leadership training and development. I did a lot of work with C-suite, primarily senior leaders. But because I had my background as a clinical psychologist, I wasn't your typical executive coach. So a lot of the, business owners, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and so on would confide in me beyond the work stuff. And they would talk to me a lot about their, personal lives, their family lives, and so on. So I was able to help them that way, kind of an unusual. So I still did, not as a clinical psychologist, but I had that background. And then at some point, I wrote this book called 7 Paths to Lasting Happiness, which I wrote from my heart, by the way, not as a PhD. It was from everything, all my patients and my clients that taught me over the years. And to my good fortune, it became a #1 bestseller on Amazon. It's been translated into 4 or 5 languages. And that became my business card to give keynotes beyond the United States. Because up until then, I had just spoken within the US, like all over the country, but not. And then, last year I spoke in Dubai and Rome and, Athens and London and Paris and so on. So it's been, and I love doing it. I love to talk about happiness, corporate wellness, how we can overcome life's challenges while maintaining our happiness, because life's challenges continue, right? So that's kind of like my story a little bit. And now I have the new TV show called The Happy Hour with Dr. Elia, which I love it. That's like I'm following your footsteps.
I don't know if you want to do that. Doesn't I got big feet? No, I'm just kidding. Well, tell our viewers what channel where they can find your show.
Yeah, so on the Mental Health Television Network, which is a new network. It's been in existence. It started in March of 2024. So here we are in February. So it's less than a year. And it's basically what ESPN was for sports 40 years ago. Well, this is the network for mental health. And they're wonderful people. So if you go to mhtn.org, you'll see the show. It's been broadcast to over 150 countries. And it's, and you know, when they approached me, kind of interesting. They said, Dr. Elia, mental health is kind of a heavy topic. I said, I know. Believe me, I've been in it for 35 years. But we like the fact that you're the happiness doctor. So we want to have a show that's about happiness and more uplifting and more positive. So it was like an instant courtship and marriage. And hopefully we're getting ready for season 2. So I'm very happy.
I wish you the best. It's a great show. And I encourage everyone out there to... There you go. Thank you, Garrett.
Wow.
I'm telling you, he's tops. Garrett is tops. Not rehearsed, folks. Garrett just put that lower third.
No, I don't know where they came. That's pretty. I'm very impressed. That's really good. The Mental Health Television Network. Yes.
That's why I've got Garrett as my producer. Viewers out there that are sitting at home and saying, "Oh, poof, happy. I'm miserable. I'm not happy. How am I going to be happy?" Without getting too much into clinical detail, because there are reasons, mental health reasons why a person might be depressed, without going through clinical diagnoses. Sure. For the average Joe out there, or Jane, or whatever, how can one be a little bit happier? How can one find joy? You know, what's the secret sauce? The general secret sauce.
Of course.
If I may be so obtuse in putting an umbrella on that.
You're good. Before we do the secret sauce, we have to ask the question, why happiness? Mm-hmm. So the great Greek philosopher Aristotle, 2,500 years ago, said the following. He said, happiness is the whole purpose and meaning of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. Think about what he just said 2,500 years ago. And to bring it even more to the present and more applicable to the rest of us, you know, when I speak, no matter what part of the world I speak, before I start my lecture, I ask the audience one question. I said, if you were to ask any parent or grandparent, regardless of ethnicity, nationality, socioeconomic status, religious affiliation, gender, what would you like for your children? What is the answer to that question? I just want them to be happy. Everybody says that. So now, if that's universal, we all want our kids to be happy, and you and I had the same experience with our moms on their deathbed. Why shouldn't that also be true for us? Not just our kids or grandkids, but for us as adults. So to me, that's the why, right? The how, or the secret sauce, like you said, there's several factors, and I'll just go through them quickly. The first one is happy people practice massive self-care. They don't take shortcuts in their self-care. How they take care of themselves physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So that's number one, meaning that their batteries are full. And they don't negotiate that. And by the way, when human beings face either a crisis or challenges, guess what the first thing that goes out the window is? Self-care. Because I got to focus on the challenge. You know what? It should be the other way around. When we're facing challenges, double down on your self-care so you can overcome those challenges better. Don't take shortcuts then. But it's natural for us to go, I don't have time to take care of myself. I got to deal with this. So that's number one, self-care. The other one is truly having an attitude of gratitude in life. Now, that's a catchy, cute phrase, right? Attitude of gratitude. It rhymes. Physiologically, I'm not a medical doctor, but we know this. Physiologically, we cannot be in a grateful state and depressed simultaneously. Because when we're in a grateful state, the greatest drug dealer in the world, and he's free, the human brain, starts releasing all the chemicals in the brain. That's right. So we're like happy. But that's when things are going well. But life is not like that. And I believe that all of us, you and I included, and Gareth, we're all graduates from the University of Adversity, all of us.
Mm.
And the older you get, the grayer the hair, the highest the degree, right? Because we face
Right.
more in life. So the
Well,
question,
Gareth doesn't have hair, but he has a hat, right,
well,
Gareth?
she has a gray beard.
Gareth, come on, come into the studio so everybody can see my buddy Gareth.
The finest dressed human I've ever met. Look at this guy. Like, I'm like, he puts Josh to shame. Wow.
I have to say, I don't normally get asked into the studio, so
Well, I mean,
it's
like,
great.
look at this man. Honestly, is that the happiest face you've ever seen? Look at this man.
He does, and he's always dressed
My
up,
audio,
ready to go.
There you go.
Anyway, back to the University of Adversity. So the question then is, can we be grateful in the midst of adversity? Because that's not easy. And one of my role models, a man that I admire greatly, is Nelson Mandela, who profoundly. Now, remember, Nelson Mandela was in prison for almost 30 years, came out of prison, and rather than going after all the people that did him harm, he forgave them.
Yes.
And actually extended a peace offering and love, even though he was the president of South Africa. Anyway, Nelson Mandela once said that in life, either you win or you learn, meaning that there's no losing as long as we're learning something. And I can say for the three of us, we've achieved some success in our lives, right? But the greatest lessons that we have all gotten have never come from our successes. They have come from what at the time seemed to be a setback, a human frailty, a mistake, a weakness. But when you look back and say, you know what, now I know exactly why that happened to me, because I wouldn't be the person I am today had I not gone through that adversity.
Yeah.
So when adversity happens, the quicker you can shift from poor me, kind of being the victim mode, and say, what am I supposed to learn from this? The better your life will be. And believe me, the lessons will come. If it doesn't come right away, hang in there. There's always a lesson while we're facing adversity.
I can attest to that because many years ago, I was a passenger in a serious head-on automobile collision, where a motorcyclist was head-on. I was a passenger. That motorcyclist went in through the windshield, out through the hatch, the back.
No way.
And the gentleman he was dead, obviously. But the gentleman who was driving the vehicle, as I ducked, I saw him get hit in the head with the front tire of the motorcycle. And I have to say, it was a life-altering experience for me. But I had a friend who was a psychologist in New York who said, one of these days you're going to thank that motorcyclist, because I was very angry. Why me? I was in television. I had a live show I had to be at, the next day, and that wasn't happening. And, in the television business, you don't miss a live show. And I was terrified I'd be dropped and this and this. It took me a very long time to reach the day or the understanding finally of what was the lesson. And, an old friend of mine, may he rest in peace, he used to say, it's a lesson and a blessing. And as you say, it might take a long time, but one day it suddenly pops into your head, or it reveals itself in some other manifestation of, she was right. And you realize why that experience, as bad as it might have been at the time when you're going through it, or you might reminisce and say, oh, it was awful, awful, awful. I now have two friends who are in Germany, and their husband and wife, they've been together for 50 years, teenage sweethearts. Wouldn't you know, they do everything together. And I actually got them to laugh. I don't know how, but I got them to laugh because I said, oh, wow, they both got hit by the same car in Berlin on holiday, and they're in the same hospital room together, bed side by side. And I mean, it's not a funny situation. However, I said, geez, you just have to do everything together. You even get run over by a car together. I said, look at the bright side. You get along well, and you're side by side in the bed, and that's a lot better than being by yourself. So, and they're happy because they're together, and they've taken a terrible situation, multiple surgeries at this point, and they realized they celebrated their anniversary side by side in the hospital beds.
I have to say that before I disappear back behind the green curtain, I quite like who I am now. And although we've all been through our fair share of ups and downs and trials, and as another one of my clients says, hard places, but I can't go back and change any of those. And even if I could, I don't think I would, because I wouldn't be where I am now had I not gone through all of it. I am a subtotal of all my experiences, both good and bad. If I might say, I'm a better person having met Kelley. This is no bombast or word of a lie. She and I have grown enormously in the time we've been working together, because she's normally in control of in her past. She's been sat there behind everything, in control of everything, and if she has to obviate some of that control to me, it's a whole power sharing dynamic and all the rest of it. It turns out you can work well that way. You just have to have good depth of understanding. And if I hadn't gone through that process with her, I don't think we would be where we are today. But I'm going to leave you both to it. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. Just to continue on, where do you see yourself? I mean, you've got a great life. God bless. You've really. What's that?
People say, "Well, you're so lucky," and so on. I'm like, maybe luck does pay. I'm not saying that it isn't luck, but even the life that I've manifested, especially the last few years, I have thought about it in practicing mindfulness and meditating and praying about it, and in great detail. So this life didn't happen overnight. And of course, with the pandemic, it got delayed, like with everybody else, that interfered. That was beyond my control. So live your best life now. Think about the things that you want. They may not come tomorrow, but start planting seeds for the life that you want to have today. It's almost like planting a tree, right? The shade may not come for 20 years, but at least plant the tree today. And I think one more thing I was going to tell you about from learning lessons is that forgiveness, and self-forgiveness especially, is key to happiness. So when we learn the lessons, like even the motorcycle that went through the windshield and almost killed you and the driver, to find room in your heart to also forgive him.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
And I'm specifically about self-forgiveness because I think most people don't know how to practice self-forgiveness very well. That's my experience in working with thousands of people. But when you practice self-forgiveness, then, as Gandhi once said, forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. And I add to that forgiveness equals freedom. Because when we forgive ourselves and others, we are free. And if we don't, we're not free until that happens. That's
a great statement. Honestly, I need to write that down and put that in my wallet. That's profound. That's the secret sauce. And it is powerful. Like I take people through a self-forgiveness process, which I've done myself. There's nothing on my list anymore that I haven't forgiven myself for. It's empty. And the process is actually relatively simple once you do it. Mm-hmm. I would ask you, if I were to practice with you and say, like, I'm coaching you, Dr. Kelley, I'm like, please write down all the things you haven't forgiven yourself for. It could be 5, 15, or 50. I don't care how many they are. Bullet points. When you're done, put a number next to each one of those statements from 1 to 10. 1 is like, well, yesterday I had dinner with some friends and I spilled some red wine on my white shirt. It's kind of embarrassing. That's a 1. That's a tiny little thing. Kind of embarrassing, but like a 10 would be you actually killed another human being. You committed murder. Mm-hmm. Most of us don't have 1s or 10. We're somewhere in between. And then we start going through the process step by step by step. And I usually start with the lowest hanging fruit, the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s. So people can gain momentum and have some success before we go on to the tougher things, the deeper things, right? This is a funny side note. Because I work with a lot of CEOs, alpha males, let's call them that way. The first time I presented this to a CEO, you know what he said to me? He goes, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm like, what? What do you mean? I'm going to start with my 9s and my 10s. Just like that. I'm like, why? No, but listen to this. I said, why? Because I was confused. Because I had my own process. He goes, because if I can forgive myself with the toughest things, then everything else below that list is easier. It's a good point. Frankly, I don't give a beep which way you go, as long as you do the exercise. I don't care which way you do it. But anyway, so yeah, self-forgiveness is huge. And then, of course, when you live your life in alignment with what you are meant to do, your purpose in life, then you tend to be happier. And last but not least, happy people perform acts of kindness, not random acts of kindness, by the way, but conscious, mindful, deliberate acts of kindness all the time. They do it on a daily basis. Why?
because their batteries are full, and therefore they have a hand to extend to somebody else who may not be quite as fortunate. And that happens all the time. And we know that when we perform acts of kindness, the drug dealer gets activated again, more drugs, more chemicals pumped into our system that stay in our system for 24 hours because it feels good.
And it's free.
It's free. And exactly. And with kindness, everybody wins. The giver, the receiver, and those that are witnessing that sometimes, because they get inspired then to go out and perform acts of kindness. So that's kind of like, you do those things on a consistent basis, you're going to have a pretty good life.
Wow. So I have one last question for you before I get to the big question. Do you still swim?
I swim, not in the pool, because I swam in the pool for so long and I smell like chlorine throughout all my teenage years and so on. I don't like the pool, but I swim when I go to Greece every day, every single day, sometimes twice a day in Greece. We have a home right by the water. So yes, I swim when I'm in the Mediterranean. I don't swim in swimming pools. I have an aversion to chlorine.
Okay. All right. And it is the tradition of the Kelley Show that we ask our guests, if you could name one person, place, thing, or experience that you're thankful or grateful for, who or what would it be? Do tell.
I mean, it would be this lady, this beautiful lady, after 33 years of marriage, Elia Gourgouris, my lovely, beautiful, inside and out wife, who's, by the way, is a lot like my mom, which I think I think I, on some level, consciously or subconscious, I was attracted to her because she has a lot of the attributes that my mom had. I'm grateful for her. We're living our 4th, 5th honeymoon right now, and it's beautiful. I want to be like that couple that were married 50 years plus. That's our goal, to get to 50 plus. And to continue to live a good life as long as we're healthy. We love to travel a lot, and we're great travel companions. She's a wonderful mom. She's been by my side through everything, and I've been by her side through the ups and downs of life. And
her name is Sona, yes?
Sona, an Armenian name. Yeah, her dad was Armenian, her mom was German. Sona, S-O-N-A, yeah. And listen, when we first met, she was a Hollywood producer, and I was like a poor starving student getting my PhD. She actually paid for our wedding and our honeymoon. I didn't have any money. I had nothing.
No wonder you married her.
I'm here for the money. No, but I did tell her, I'm going to make this up to you the rest of my life. Just hang in there. Let me get my PhD so I can get started, start making some money. And I have. So that's good.
Oh, that's wonderful. And this is a photo taken of you in Greece. And you mentioned this is a tiny church.
Look at this church.
And tell us what's so special about getting to this church.
Yeah, so they have weddings that take place here. But when the tide is high, where we're standing, the water's over that. So you have to catch it. You have to go there when the tide is low, get to the church and come back. It's kind of a funny thing. Yeah.
That's funny.
Adorable. It's on the island of Leros, not the most famous island, but it's not Mykonos, Santorini, but beautiful. Look at that place. Magical.
Oh, it's just lovely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for giving us your time, your expertise, and your kindness. You're really a great, great person. I hope we can continue communicating with one another. But for our viewers, if you would like to reach out to Dr. Elia, America's happiness doctor, we have his contact information up here. And you can reach out to the good doctor. He's a wonderful, warm, amazing person for public speaking, conversations, interviews. I think you just do about everything, right?
A lot of keynotes for organizations and companies. Yeah, when they want to have somebody to speak to the whole company and all the employees and so on, they bring me in. My last message to your audience, however, Dr. Kelley, is this: do not procrastinate your happiness. Live your best life now. Forget all the whens. When I have enough money, when I have enough time, when I'm in the right relationship, when I have kids, when the kids grow up. There are no guarantees that any one of us will be here tomorrow. None. So live your best life now and be a bright and shining example to the people that love you and you love them. And no greater gift than your best version of yourself walking around in a happy state. What great
Jane Fonda said a few years back in an interview about, doing her life. And she said, I don't know how many tomorrows I have left.
None of us.
And it was so profound. And she also said, you can be really old at 60 and really young at 85. And I think of that every day. And I say, all right, let's just go with gusto, because we don't know. We don't know how many tomorrows we have. So live today and live in the moment. But
and Jane Fonda is in her 80s, and she looks fantastic. Her energy is fantastic. She's what a great lady. Like really.
Oh yeah. And the show she did with Lily Tomlin, Frankie and Grace, hysterical. It's brilliant. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest on the show. I'll see you soon. God bless.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you, Dr. Kelley.
And if you would like to be a future guest on The Kelley Show, reach out to us. We have our contact information down here. See it. And we've got, there it is. The QR bug in the corner. And don't forget to write in, give us your name, your location, a little bit about your story, and why you would like to share your story on The Kelley Show. And subscribe today so you'll see all the former interviews we've had. And we're wrapping up our month of love, the heart, happiness. And stay tuned for next month's theme is it's March. It's the Irish invasion. So my people are coming to the studio to share everything Irish with all of you. So if you're not in for it, tune in anyway. You'll learn something. We'll have good crack, as we say, and a lot of laughs. So for now, stay tuned. Have a great day. Be happy. Peace and love. Gareth, take it away.
If you would like to be a guest on The Kelley Show, send us an email with your contact information, where in the world you are, and a brief description of the story you'd like to share today.